In an unprecedented move, French authorities are opening a criminal investigation into charges that Abu Dhabi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed has been complicit in acts of torture in Yemen. The initial investigation was opened last October after 2 complaints were filed when bin Zayed visited Paris in 2018. The charges against bin Zayed have been made by the International Coalition for the Defense of Rights and Freedoms and 6 Yemeni citizens subjected to torture and violence in UAE-run prisons inside their country.
الحادث اللي حدث مؤلم جدا.
The complaint accuses bin Zayed, as Commander-in-Chief of UAE forces, of providing the means and orders for these violations to be carried out.
Il est le dirigeant suprême des forces armées des Émirats arabes unis et il est également l'inspirateur, avec M. Mohammed Ben Salman, de toute la guerre qui a lieu au Yémen en ce moment et des méthodes utilisées pour cette guerre, c'est-à-dire des bombardements massifs, des bombardements indiscriminés, et puis le recours à quelques milices locales, je pense aux Belt Security Forces en particulier, qui elles-mêmes massacrent à tir-larigot.
Investigations by Al-Watana, a leading Yemeni human rights group, garnered thousands of interviews with ex-detainees who pointed to the UAE and its proxies for the most heinous crimes committed. According to the Al-Watana report, detainees are subjected to various forms of torture and inhuman treatment, including but not limited to beating, kicking, burning, waterboarding, hanging, deprivation of water and food, and sexual abuse that could amount to rape and threats of rape. In just one case, one of the victims, according to the report, was put in a large barrel-like hole for 2 days, and his feet and hands were tied up with wire before he was stripped naked and suspended from the ceiling for several hours. He was also subjected to electric shocks and burned with lit cigarettes.
Anyone who disagrees with the unlawful occupation of Saudi-led coalition of the southern provinces end up being unlawfully arrested, detained, tortured, raped, and quite often in these detention centers. And these are very, very serious violations of human rights. And some of these victims weren't even politically active people as such. They just, for example, some of them declined to be recruited as part of Saudi-led coalition forces to fight in the southern borders of the Saudi regime.
So far, a total of 419 cases of arbitrary abusive detentions, 327 enforced disappearances, 141 torture allegations, and 25 deaths in detention have been attributed to the UAE and allied forces, although the real figures might be much higher. Forces backed by the United Arab Emirates, including the Southern Transitional Council, STC, have also been named as abusers in rights groups' reports. In detention centers run by the separatist STC, prisoners are reportedly being subjected to a wide range of torture, such as nail removal, forced nudity, and rape.
I'm originally from a family of southern Yemen, and I can tell you from knowing, having personal knowledge about what is being said about southern provinces, in particular Hadramaut and Aden and Taiz, people are not happy with the unlawful occupation of the Emiratis. Let's just go back to the detention centers itself. Why have they set up these detention centers? They set them up in order to subdue any potential resistance and also to force people into recruitment, into mercenaryhood, to go and fight in Saudi borders.
According to Amnesty International, Abu Dhabi is facilitating the torture, violence, and disappearances in southern Yemen's secretive prisons. Reports in the Associated Press have also revealed that several activists, journalists, and members of the Yemeni Muslim Brotherhood have been detained and grilled on trumped-up charges. Many of these forms of torture, such as sexual violence and stripping personal dignity, may amount to war crimes. Such accusations against the UAE can be tried in France under the universal jurisdiction principle that countries are obliged to investigate war crimes wherever they may have been carried out.
Il y a un premier objectif court terme, c'est de faire prendre conscience aux autorités françaises qu'on ne peut pas s'allier avec n'importe qui et que sous prétexte de business, on ne peut pas tout accepter. Et puis, il y a un autre but plus long terme qui, là, ne vise pas directement Mohammed Ben Zayed, mais qui vise également tous les dictateurs ou tous les massacrants de la planète. C'est de dire que, attention, lorsque vous venez en France, le droit français et les juridictions françaises, dans leur indépendance, peuvent juger ce que vous avez fait. Et c'est pas parce que vous tuez, vous massacrez à 10 000 km d'ici que votre impunité sera accordée.
But the question of diplomatic immunity for the UAE Crown Prince is still under consideration. Above all, the special relations between Abu Dhabi and Paris make a serious move against bin Zayed almost impossible. France has a military base in Abu Dhabi, and the United Arab Emirates, still its leading client, purchased 1.5 billion euros worth of French arms in 2019 alone. Moreover, French special forces are on the ground in Yemen, fighting alongside troops from the UAE.
I foresee a situation where a brave judge can continue the investigation and even declare that there is a case to answer. And I can also foresee a situation where the Macron regime will try to undermine the independence of the judiciary and perhaps exert some sort of political power to try and stop the case from continuing.
To fight the Yemen war, the UAE has also lured foreign mercenaries, including thousands of jobless Sudanese men, promising them jobs in the UAE with enticing salaries. By coincidence, the British law firm Stoke White has also called on the authorities in Britain, the United States, and Turkey to arrest high-ranking Emirati officials for committing war crimes and torture in Yemen. In the words of Hakan Kamuz, head of international law at Stoke White, the case is filed against high-ranking officials in the UAE government and Ministry of Defense, alongside the U.S. mercenaries who have acted under the direct orders of the UAE government. Again, like in the case in France, the question is if the British government will take the case seriously, given the trade relations Britain has with the UAE. Knowing that the Western governments will never hazard their economic ties for the sake of humanity, the UAE Crown Prince has overseen war crimes in cold blood since the onset of the Yemen war in 2015.
If we don't uphold human rights at this juncture, and Yemen is a test for the international community on many aspects, particularly in relation to upholding international humanitarian and human rights laws. And it will expose the hypocrisy of countries that claim to uphold these principles, but in practice support regimes that breach them with impunity routinely without any accountability.
Hundreds of Yemeni civilians are dreaming of regaining their stolen freedom in the UAE-run prisons, while forces under the command of Mohammed bin Zayed continue to arbitrarily detain, inhumanely disrespect, and brutally torture ordinary people on Yemeni soil.
الحادث اللي حدث مؤلم جدا لجميع السعوديين.